My name is Heather Gray, and the program is Just Peace, and I'm pleased to say that this evening we're going to be talking with Greg Palast. Greg Palast is known for his investigative reports for The Guardian and BBC Television. Palast is author of New York Times bestsellers, including The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Palast's new film, Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman, produced by Martin Sheen and narrated by Rosario Dawson, is free online, but only through the Georgia Senate runoff December 6th. Watch it on vigilantemovie.com. Welcome, Greg Palast.
Glad to be with you again, Heather, and glad to be as we've pre-recorded this because when your show goes on, I'll be winging it to Georgia again.
Yes, exactly. So it's hard to know where to start, but I'm so appreciative of you producing this film, Greg. So tell us about the film, because what's so intriguing to me is that you were traveling throughout the state of Georgia and talking to so many different people and exploring so many different facets of how the vote has been suppressed and is being suppressed in Georgia. So where do you want to begin with this? How do you want to start this?
Well, telling you that Vigilante is a movie, which is obviously it's Georgia's vote suppression hitman. So you guys get to be the stars. For 9 years, for those who know me and have watched me, I'm the guy, that guy that runs around in the fedora, the investigative reporter you'll see on Democracy Now! and some of the other Pacifica programs as well. But I've also been working BBC, The Guardian, Rolling Stone for 9 years, even though I've lived in London and New York and now LA. I keep going back to Georgia because you guys cannot run elections in a straightforward manner. You have a big problem allowing people of color to vote. Now, I'm not accusing you, Heather, because I know you're trying to actually break through we use the polite word, like I say in the film Vigilante, we use this polite word, vote suppression. But when someone, shoplifts or steals your car, you don't say, my car's been suppressed. My car's been suppressed. So we're talking about wholesale shoplifting of the votes of people of color. Why is that happening? Who does it and how's it done? So right now, this is an investigation of it's actually, even though it has national interest, you got Martin Sheen, President Bartlett from West Wing, you got Rosario Dawson, the great superstar, George DiCaprio and others involved in this. So why are we down in Georgia? Because you have a bill, SB 202, a new law signed last year by your dear and now reelected omnipotent governor, Brian Kemp. Now, this law is 98 pages of obstacle courses for voters of color. In particular, I am concentrating on those parts of SB 202 that most people don't know about. I mean, I kind of made a big deal and became national news that SB 202 does not allow you to give someone a glass of water, bottle of water, a slice of pizza if they're waiting in line 4, 5, 6 hours in your dear state. But pizza's not the big issue. In that law, there are several new things that no one's talking about. Number one, it's called Vigilante because in the law, it authorizes, Heather, anyone in Georgia can challenge the vote of any other voter in Georgia. And it's now in the new law says unlimited. Now, what do we mean by unlimited? It means unlimited, Heather. And so, for example, in Cobb County, you have a GOP operative named Pam Reardon who personally challenged the votes of 32,000 voters. And you'll see in the film, and by the way, go ahead and cut in any parts of the film you want. You'll see in the film that I confront Pam Reardon with pictures of her African-American neighbors. Well, they're not too close because she's in Silver Springs in that white enclave with the big mansions. But just down the road, you have her black neighbors, and she has challenged again 32,000. And I showed her pictures of the people that she challenged. I said, do you know this person? No. Do you know where they live? No. Have you spoken to them? No. Have you written them a letter? No. But you challenged her right to vote. Well, she didn't like that. And you'll see in the film, she chases me out of her house. Now, this woman is armed to the teeth. I kid you not. She had ammo. You'll see ammo boxes all over the place. And right next to the door, a modified assault rifle, Russian assault rifle. And so I wasn't going to argue with her. And then she starts staring, this nice Republican lady dresses like Nancy Reagan in the red dress and high heels and all that. She starts swearing at me like a sailor. I had to get rid of most of her diatribe. Otherwise, I'd have an X rating. You see that in the film. But then there's another vigilante. There are 88 vigilantes. Everyone is a Republican operative. And I'm not being partisan in that. I'm nonpartisan. If you know Greg Palast, I'm nonpartisan. The other vigilante in the film Vigilante is the chairman of the Republican Party in Columbus, Georgia, Columbus, Muskogee County. He personally challenged 4,000 voters. Again, he didn't know any of these guys. He just handed in names, including the name he challenged, Gamaliel Turner. Gamaliel Turner is a major Gamaliel Turner. He is the Pentagon's chief expert on warfare of the future, whatever that is mainly about soldier protection. And they challenged his right to vote. This GOP operative challenges his right to vote because Major Turner was assigned by the Pentagon to a base in California. In fact, as we speak now, he's in Doha. But guess what? You do not lose your citizenship just because you're a black soldier assigned to another military base. That's what they were literally doing, challenging African-American soldiers who were assigned to other bases.
Here is Alton Russell, who is chairman of the Muskogee County, Columbus, Georgia's Republican Party, along with comments from Major Gamaliel Turner, whose vote was challenged.
Right now, I'm the chairman of the Columbus Muskogee Republican Party, so I'm pretty involved in that, which I think is the right. Let's see, that would be the right way to be, and also I'm on the right.
Apparently, you had filed some challenges to 4,000 voters.
Yes.
No ballot. No ballot in the mail. Called to register, and the announcement there was, Mr. Turner, you have been challenged.
Major Gamaliel Turner is the military's expert on future warfare.
I project weapons and capabilities out to the future. For me, it's all about the survival of the soldier.
Assigned to Fort Hueneme in California.
So you're telling me 2,600 miles away, 2 days or 3 days before an election, that if I want to vote, all I have to do is show up and prove as an American citizen that I have the right to vote. Again, you talk to fools like that. You talk to fools like that. I'm not a fool.
And I also there was a Hispanic soldier, had a Hispanic girlfriend in Texas. I'm not making this up. They cited the Facebook page of his girlfriend in Texas, making a point that she's Hispanic. And the Forsyth Election Board voted to cancel his registration. I can't make that up. All this stuff is in the film. You're not going to find a lot of the only white people I found on that list, and by the way, we went through the lists with experts, and we also called 800 people on these hit lists, vigilante hit lists, almost entirely people of color and some young white people. In other words, they're all people of color. That is, their color is blue as voters, because they obviously go after the young white voters, especially in the Atlanta area. Now, by the way, again, the film is called Vigilante. And due to a donation to my investigative fund, this is Greg Palast, and we have a little Palast investigative fund. Jamie Foxx has put up the money to allow any of you in Georgia to see the film by going for free during this runoff by going to vigilantemovie.com, vigilantemovie.com. And I want to tell you, by the way, Heather, about two other ways to see the film. Just you yourself can go to Vigilante Movie, it's one word, vigilantemovie.com, and you can see the film for free for the next 2 weeks. You just stick in your email and you get a link and you get the film, and you'll laugh at these whacks. You'll cry if you are any type of, unless you have a heart of stone when you see what happens to Georgia voters. The other way is, besides go vigilantemovie.com, is on Wednesday, I will be at the Norcross Center in Gwinnett, and we will be showing the film, and I'll be there live with Latasha Brown, the founder of Black Voters Matter. I will be there with Barbara Arnwine of the Transformative Justice Coalition, C.K. Hoffler, who's the national chairwoman of Rainbow Push, Reverend Jackson's organization, a lot of the voting rights frontline people. Cheryl Moses will be hosting for the Black Gwinnett Magazine and the Black Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. So Norcross Center, Wednesday, there'll be showings at 1 p.m., 4 p.m., and 7 p.m. with discussion afterwards. So come out and meet us, meet the gang that made the film. And finally, next Saturday, that is December 3rd, I will actually be showing the film down in Douglas, but we will also be holding for Pacifica stations and centering, especially for WRFG, a special virtual showing of the film, Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman, at 5 p.m. Georgia time, and we'll be able to, Heather will have that link up. That's going to be Vigilante Pacifica, and you can ask me all the questions you want. So if you can tag on virtually, we can have a discussion. But if you just want to see the film, go to vigilantemovie.com. Otherwise, and if you have any questions, just log on this coming Saturday at 5 p.m. So there's your choices.
Greg, what is the date again of when it will be shown? Like where WRFG folks can watch it as well?
Okay, so WRFG folks can watch it this second. You can put me in the corner.
Right, exactly.
But you can go, if you're an RFG listener, Radio Free Georgia, go to vigilantemovie.com. Vigilantemovie.com. Now, if you want to join me and Heather I assume you'll be joining us, Heather, on Saturday virtually. There'll be a giant Zoom meeting, and it'll have some of your buddies from your affiliates from around the country. So that will be on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, and that will be vigilantepacifica.com. And, if all these things confuse you, we're going to straighten it all. We'll have all the showings and all the links you need at gregpalast.com. That's GREGPALAST, otherwise vigilantemovie.com, just to get straight to the flicks.
So Greg, you're talking about Saturday. Which Saturday?
This is Saturday, December 3rd.
December 3rd.
The one before the election. We figure after the election, it'll still be an important film, but you won't be able to see it for free. In fact, you won't be able to see it because it hasn't been commercially released. This is only a special free preview for Georgians. That's why we created this special link for Georgians. We're only promoting it in Georgia, vigilantemovie.com, up through the runoff.
Perfect. One of the things that so impressed me, there's just so much that impressed me about this film. But, one of the things that you did also, you researched the Kemp family history. It was absolutely fascinating. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I really shouldn't, because, you've got a new law in Georgia now there's another law. HB 1085, I believe, is the number. It says your governor signed a law that said that it is illegal for a school teacher, K to 12, to teach divisive historical issues. So it can't be divisive. Now, why is he doing that? Maybe, as you'll find out in the film, very few Georgians know that Brian Kemp's family was the first family to bring enslaved Africans to Georgia. This came as a shock to even me. Our great producer, David Ambrose, started uncovering this stuff. It's there. That is, Georgia was a free state. Georgia was one of the only territories in the American colonies that outlawed slavery, because you had these small farmers who knew darn well the minute you have plantations, they're going to end up either working on the plantations themselves as guards and caretakers, which is not why they came to America, or they will end protecting the properties and protecting the owners from the wrath of the slave owners A lot of, by the way, of those people that owned Africans were killed by those Africans in Georgia. There was more, people think about the Nat Turner uprising or John Brown's uprising. I got to tell you, in Georgia, there are a lot of people who were enslaved who said, I'd rather you hang me than put up with this. And there was a lot of uprisings. But anyway, in Georgia, who brought in enslaved people? It was the Habersham family, which is the original name of the Kemps. Habersham and Roswell became the Kemps. And because obviously Habersham and Roswell, with their associations with enslavement, that's not exactly your winning political name. So it's Kemp. But he can run, he can't hide. His cousin, who I spoke with, said, I know, and he knows where the family's money and privilege came from basically from enslavement and beatings, whippings. In fact, his ancestor, Roswell King, was known internationally as one of the cruelest slave drivers in America. And he became internationally infamous after a British actress wrote about the extreme cruelty of Kemp's ancestors, the murders, the beatings, the rapes. And so Kemp's ancestors were infamous worldwide. Now, Brian Kemp didn't bring people in chains from Africa. It's not his, that doesn't make him responsible for that. But what is his responsibility is the truth. Instead of passing a law saying, don't ever tell, if a school teacher tells the kids how their governor became so rich and powerful out of nowhere. It wasn't out of nowhere. They could lose their job. And this is in the film that you have to understand where Kemp got his money. And then Kemp personally, he plays himself. He has this whole myth he created that he's a small businessman who's self-made man. He wasn't self-made nothing. He inherited a construction company from his family. And he married into a family with other plantations and forests. In fact, his big holding is called Plantation LLC. They took their old plantations and they basically converted that capital into toilet paper farms. He has these vast, Brian Kemp owns these vast tracts of pine tree that he mulches into toilet paper to sell to the Koch Industries, the Koch brothers company, and one of the surviving Koch brothers. And they are Georgia Pacific. So we go into the power structure of Georgia. It's not just a litany of people losing their votes, but you get to get the real stuff on real Georgia history. I agree, that is something that's been well hidden and the governor would like to keep hidden.
I'm sure. One of the things that impressed me also about this is that, so Georgia, when it was created, actually, and the first head of it was General James Oglethorpe, and it was known as a debtor colony. Okay. So it was composed of people in Britain who had been imprisoned because of debt, right? So now the other thing, Greg, that you might know as well is that I used to live in Australia, which was also a debtor colony. Right.
Yep.
So it was along the lines of Georgia as well. They were similar in the way they were created. And the thing is, James Oglethorpe did not allow slaves into Georgia. So I'm trying to make this connection here. I'm assuming that the Habersham family came into play maybe after Oglethorpe had left. I don't know.
Yes. And so what happened is absolutely Oglethorpe and especially a lot of the Swiss freeholders, they begged the King of England, do not allow the Habershams, Kemp's ancestors, to bring in Africans. We'll all end up slaves. And don't forget, Africans at the time were the high-tech workers because they knew how to plant rice. And the English certainly didn't know how to plant rice. The Swiss farmers didn't know how to plant rice, but that's the cash crop. And so Habersham cut a deal with the King of England. The other thing that you'll find very interesting, because we, lately in really looking deep into history, we're now getting very uncomfortable about, some of our founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson. who owned slaves, enslaved people. He had, his common law wife was a black woman, and he had black children who he treated as second-class citizens. But what most people don't know is that he actually wrote part of the Declaration of Independence a draft was written in Savannah when he was at the home of the Habershams, Kemp's ancestors. And the longest part of the Declaration of Independence is missing. He wrote a long screed, Thomas Jefferson, you'll find in Vigilante. Jefferson wrote this whole screed in the Declaration of Independence against enslavement. He said this is a crime against humanity. We are basically murdering people in these boats, and we bring them here for nothing but a miserable death. It's against the laws of God and nature. And the locals also signed a petition saying the same thing. So what happened to that? What happened to that section of the Declaration of Independence that said slavery is against the laws of the God of nature, as he liked to put it? And the answer is that Kemp's ancestors, who were in the Continental Congress, Joseph Habersham, objected, and it was the only part of the Declaration of Independence removed by the Continental Congress, the anti-enslavement clause. So Greg, this is the kind of history.
Greg, that is absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah.
That whole history, and the fact that he wrote that here in Georgia. Is that correct?
That's right. So understand the Declaration of Independence was drafted in Savannah at, the Pink House. You can go there right now at the Pink House in Savannah, and where you can have a very expensive dinner if you like, built by enslaved people. And you know what? That's that's heritage too. And it's not that I want to blame Brian Kemp for that. The point is, where does his special white rich privilege come from? And it comes from this history, and he can't run away from it. And his cousin said, we know where our money comes from. We know where our power comes from. Why does he just say so? And she is working. You'll see in the film, we go to Kemp's old plantation in Savannah, where his ancestors were actually managing, they were the slave drivers, infamously. And right now, Griffin Lotson, Councilman Griffin Lotson, or Commissioner Griffin Lotson in Darien, has a group of people who maintain the original Gullah language and their dances and songs. We have them in the film. But it's all about, you can't understand. They want to preserve the memory of that plantation. It's actually the people, the descendants of the people who were enslaved there who maintain that plantation, because they don't want you to forget. But Brian Kemp wants you to have amnesia. He's counting on it because the Wall Street Journal has just endorsed him. Are you ready? For president of the United States. They said, forget Trump, forget DeSantis. The Wall Street Journal is pumping for Kemp as president. Don't be surprised if he runs.
You're listening to the Just Peace program on WRFG Atlanta.
So all this is in the film Vigilante. So go to vigilantemovie.com, and you can see the film Vigilante, or go to gregpalast.com and see. We're going to have special showings for WRFG and also in Norcross on Wednesday. The RFG showing will be virtual on Saturday, but you can pick it up anytime. If you're Georgian, by the way, we know your IP addresses, so don't cheat. Though if you're a Georgian who lives somewhere else, go ahead. Vigilantemovie.com. And you can see these things. By the way, one thing I wanted to add before I forget about the Vigilante, because people have to kind of see this, and that's why we made it a movie. The Vigilante who challenged the soldiers at Fort Benning, the chairman of the Republican Party there, he dresses up like a vigilante. And you'll see this on the film. This guy has a cowboy hat, the boots. He literally has pearl-handled 6-gun on a holster. Now, he does this as like a lot of Southerners are doing this new, quote, reenactment. Because you can't wear white sheets anymore. So you dress up as a Confederate soldier, dress up as Doc Holliday, a vigilante, and you carry a gun. His gun was loaded. It made our host very nervous. The host, by the way, was Major Turner. And this guy shows up at Major Turner's house, not realizing that this is the house he said this black soldier did not live in. Now he's in the black soldier's home. By the way, one of the nicest homes in Columbus, because he's a top brass guy. And I said, you know where you are? No. Well, meet Major Gamaliel Turner, the guy you said shouldn't be allowed to vote. And he the Turner was told in California under SB 202, and this is true. They said, all you have to do is come in and prove that you are an American citizen and that you live where you live. This is what they tell a black soldier 3 days before the election in California. So all I have to do, let's get this right, all I have to do is fly in 2,600 miles to Georgia, explain that I, a man in uniform, is an American citizen and that I have the right to vote. Again. And how come these letters are going out to black people? They're going out to Asian Americans. How come? What's going on here? And the answer is, this is the new SB 202, but it's also something else, Heather, which is that if you think Brian Kemp, who is, and no one disagrees with this in either party, he's not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer. So Brian Kemp didn't come up with this vigilante voter stuff. It was actually created by a prior governor of yours named Eugene Talmadge. You've taken his bridge in Savannah. Eugene Talmadge was the candidate of the Ku Klux Klan who ran against and beat a Democrat supported by Franklin Roosevelt and then later Harry Truman. Roosevelt and Truman had promised black soldiers when they returned from the war that they would be allowed to vote. But then Talmadge came up with this system of saying, we can challenge this whole vigilante challenge system. He wasn't governor yet. He'd been governor. He left. Now he's running again. He said, if we challenge every black voter, and he, by the way, of course, he didn't use the term black. He said, we'll not allow Negro or other N-word voters. And he had the Klan submit challenges to every black voter in several counties. They literally eliminated every black voter, but one by one, they would say, this person doesn't really live here. He's not qualified to vote. Joe Black isn't qualified to vote. John Jackson is not qualified to vote. That's how Talmadge, through this racist tactic, became governor of Georgia. And now what Brian Kemp has done is simply take the Talmadge Ku Klux Klan vigilante challenge and put it into cyberspace. In other words, this woman who challenged 32,000 people, she didn't fill out Mimeo forms like the Ku Klux Klan did in 1946. She submitted a thumb drive with 32,000 names. The guy from Columbus, Doc Holliday, the guy with the guns, he submitted 4,000 names as a spreadsheet. So they just took Jim Crow and put Jim Crow into cyberspace. That is what your governor is doing. And look, I'm not telling you to vote for Warnock or for Herschel Walker. That's not my job. But I think that if you let the people of Georgia vote, they'll do the right thing. But clearly the GOP does not trust Georgians to cast ballots without interference. If you're a Georgia of color. So I want people to be very aware of this. Another reason, if you get challenged, they can challenge you. These vigilantes have a right to challenge you under Georgia law on election day. And then you may not even know it because you've cast your ballot or you've mailed in your ballot and they've challenged it. And you're supposed to get a postcard and you must physically come into the county offices within 6 days of the election to get your ballot counted. A lot of ballots are going to be thrown out. People won't even know because who checks who looks at these junk mail postcards? Even if you get one, and you just have, because of this shortened time, you have almost no time to save your ballot. I'm very concerned about this runoff, which is why Jamie Foxx and DiCaprio and others who have produced this film are insistent that we show it in Georgia this next week.
Well, thanks so much for all of that, though, Greg. I mean, it's just fascinating, detailed account and history of Georgia. Thank you. So, let me just ask you this too, because you've done so much research on, like in Florida as well, and just
all over the world, actually,
all over the world. Okay. So is Georgia in any way unique at all?
It is and it isn't. Georgia, I was living in London working for BBC and The Guardian when I flew to Georgia to cover that election, then Al Jazeera. And then I was in New York, and now I'm in Hollywood, right? Doing movies. But why do we keep going back to Georgia? Because you guys are the kind of petri dish where they grow the new Jim Crow tactics, or as my good partner, cameraman Zach D. Roberts says, it's the Klan's kitchen for the test kitchen for new Jim Crow recipes. So you have the Vigilante challenge and another one, by the way. And this is and again, so Georgia, whatever happens in Georgia spreads. Back in 2018, well, first in 2016, I investigated Brian Kemp because he had this little cabal going with the Secretary of State of Kansas named Chris Kobach. And the two of them were promoting this massive purge program, which removed hundreds, and I'm not making this up, hundreds of thousands of black people were removed. Kemp and Kobach of Kansas accused 7.2 million Americans of voting twice or registering two different states, the same person. Now, that's pretty serious. That would be the biggest voting crime wave, not only in U.S. history, but I'm sure the 7 million illegal voters. We got a hold of the list. This is Brian Kemp. But again, this was used in 35 states, but it was created out of Georgia. Okay. The Vigilante Voter Challenge is now spreading to 10 states. It's not just Georgia, but it starts in Georgia, and Georgia, especially the Georgia GOP, is very, very good at testing out like SB 202, which is just basically 98-page roadmap for removing voters of color from the voter rolls or blocking them from voting or not counting their ballots. It's going to be used everywhere. And believe me, Brian Kemp didn't come up with this. We're working with New Georgia Project too, and they say, look, we keep seeing this stuff that's coming out of ALEC and other places. And where did, an obvious question is, it is a national program. They're just focused to Georgia. One, they also know Georgia's, of course, the ultimate swing state electorally. We just saw that in 2020 when they got freaked out because the Republicans lost 2 Senate seats and the presidential vote. And so that's why SB 202. And one of the big things, for example, is Georgia is leading the way on basically eliminating mail-in voting and drop box voting, mail-in and the use of drop boxes for your ballot. Why? Because there was a massive increase in voter turnout in 2020 because they made it easy to vote by mail and use drop boxes. So this time, now are you ready for this number, which I have not seen in a single Georgia paper, a single national paper? Your governor was claiming that there was a record turnout for early voting. And in the field of journalism, we call that a complete lie. Let me repeat that. This so-called record early voting was a complete, utter PR fabrication, and no one has caught it. If you go to gregpalast.com, you'll see my reports. In 2020, Heather, 1.28 million people, in other words, 1 1/3 million Georgians cast ballots by mail, and a big hunk of them, probably half of them, were put into drop boxes to get them counted. Now, no one has proven not a single drop box ballot, which was carefully reviewed. Every damn ballot was reviewed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Everyone checked out. No fraudulent ballots. But they took away the drop boxes, and the mail-in vote dropped from 1.2 million to 0.2 million. That's 1 million votes, early votes disappeared. Because when you do early voting, advanced voting, as you call it in Georgia, when you do that early or advanced voting in Georgia, it always includes the mail-in vote. This time, they simply left off the mail-in vote. And so 1 million votes just disappears from the reporting. Now, they weren't thrown in the ocean. They just took the drop boxes, and under SB 202, drop boxes, which used to be in front of the buildings, like the Fulton County offices had a drop box. Fulton County, in fact, the 4 Atlanta counties had 107 drop boxes. Not one vote in any of those drop boxes was illegal. Yet they said, oh, we have to stop fraud. So they required them to be locked away inside and also reduce the number only in urban areas. They said you could only have one drop box per 100,000 active voters. One drop box for 100,000 voters. And they have to be active voters. So basically, the 4 Atlanta counties went from 107 drop boxes to 25. Plus, the drop boxes could only be open inside buildings and only open during the early voting hours, which were also reduced. And now you have almost no time for early voting at all. There'll be early voting this week. If you haven't voted, I would recommend getting in there like right now, because you don't want to wait for those lines on December 6th. So
basically, they wanted to make it more difficult for people altogether.
And they did. A million votes, a million. It was slightly more than a million vote drop. That's an 81% drop in drop box and mail-in voting. And of course, there's so little time in this runoff, you're almost nuts to try to get a mail-in ballot and mail it back in through the post office. But pushing away those drop boxes. And so now the Vigilante story, Heather, and the drop box story go together. And here's how. In the film Vigilante, and again, you could see it free only during the runoff, vigilantemovie.com. And you will see a little segment of the movie about a group called True the Vote. Now, remember those vigilantes with 32,000 names, 4,000 names, 10,000 names, 149,000 challenges altogether this year. 149,000 challenges in Georgia, not reported. And they got those lists because this crazy lady in red and this racist gunslinger in Muskogee County in Columbus, they didn't come up with these lists themselves. They got them from this group, True the Vote, out of Texas. And they're funded by billionaires in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's why I say it is national in scope. They tried out in Georgia. Now, so they got this cockamamie list of supposed illegal voters from this group in Texas. This is the same group in Texas, True the Vote, which produced that film 2,000 Mules. Now you'll see that we have a lot of fun with 2,000 Mules, this crazy film that was launched by Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, which says that in Georgia, thousands and thousands of illegal ballots were stuffed into mailboxes. Specifically, they show a picture of Stacey Abrams and then a picture of George Soros. So you have a Jewish billionaire and a black Politico, and they're all together. And Soros gave money to Stacey Abrams, who paid black men, and they're all black men, gave them $10 each to stuff ballots into ballot drop boxes. This is now you say you might laugh at this. Don't laugh. It was this claim that got your governor and your legislature to put away the drop boxes so they wouldn't be attacked by swarms of black mules. They called them mules, like drug dealers. So they're calling black men mules, claiming that a black man will take $10 to cast an illegal ballot. And think about it, Heather. Every drop box has a security camera on top of it. So all of this is being done, and they even show security camera footage, and they show this black man coming out of his car, putting a ballot, and I think a second one, because in Georgia you can put in family ballots into the drop boxes. In every state you can. In fact, most states you can put in anyone's ballot, but it doesn't matter. The guy puts in a couple ballots in the drop box, and in this film, again promoted by Trump, they say, there it is. They have one guy commenting, and then he goes back to his car, this Georgia voter, an African-American male, say, there he goes. You're seeing O.J. Simpson leaving the scene of a crime. So he's comparing, he says he's a black man walking back to his car after voting and equates that with stabbing your wife to death. And it turns out, by the way, we were able to find out who that guy, that evil black man was that supposedly was, O.J. Simpson murders his wife and then votes her ballot, I guess. Crazy. Doesn't matter. Turns out to be a high-tech executive. He's like a major executive in Atlanta.
Oh,
I'm laughing about it, but it's sick. And that's how they removed the drop boxes. Yeah. And he sued, by the way.
Oh, he did. I didn't realize. What's the status of the suit? Do you know?
People.
Is it ongoing? Is it ongoing?
Yeah. Well, what happens is they've been sued by everyone with their crazy claims. So they're getting their keister suit off, and they were in jail. By the way, the guys who made the film, they were in jail for contempt because the judge said, where did you get this cockamamie information that Stacey Abrams is paying $10 a voter? Where are you getting this information that these voting machines are all rigged? Where are you getting this stuff from? And they said, we can't tell you. We can't tell you our special, our secret sources, because they didn't have any sources. They're not journalists. They don't have a right to, if they had, so they have information on commission of a crime. Okay, then let's go arrest Stacey Abrams if she's really paying hundreds of millions of dollars to black men to stuff ballot boxes. By the way, just while you may be laughing about it, let me just make another point, which is both sad and informative. You do realize that why pay someone to take an absentee ballot, an illegal absentee ballot, stick it in a mailbox where there's a camera on it, and you have to run all over the state putting in all these ballots when you could just take 500 and stick them in a mailbox, right? So why would they do this? All this crazy stuff. They never explain why, if you're going to commit the crime. And by the way, in case anyone doesn't know this, hang on. Now that moment of silence had a purpose. For those who may be able to watch this on video, I want to show you a Georgia ballot, which is the same. They use the same ballot printing company as we do in California. Every single ballot, mail-in ballot. I know you like to think your ballot's private. Kind of. It has a barcode on it, which is unique to that ballot. Take a look at the barcodes. They're not the same. They have little barcode numbers next to them. So you have barcodes, which are not the same for any ballot. You also have a QR code, which is different from any ballot. And you have to have an exact match of the signature in Georgia, remember, with your ballot. So you talk about people having to steal ballots. And by the way, they said they're all stolen. Thousands and thousands and thousands. I mean, hundreds of thousands of ballots. In all, they said 800,000 ballots were illegally cast. 800,000. They had to steal 800,000 ballots, somehow fake the signatures, and then hire literally in Georgia hundreds and hundreds of black men to supposedly willing to commit this felony crime on camera. So this is what you'll see in the film Vigilante. It's humorous, it's crazy, and then it's sad and sick when you see what your state is doing to democracy. And so again, you want to see the film? 3 ways to see it. Vigilantemovie.com. Anytime, any place. Just, watch it on your phone if you want to. But I want you to listen to Rosario Dawson's wonderful voice. So maybe in something better than a phone. But that's Vigilantemovie.com through the runoff. So you got another week, my friends. That's it. And then, if you want to talk to me about the film, and I think Heather will be joining us, it'll be 5 p.m. on Saturday at vigilantepacifica.org. And if all that confuses you, Wednesday I'll be in Gwinnett and Saturday I'll be in Douglas. If you want to get that information, just go to gregpalast.com, But Vigilante movie, that's pretty good. You get the movie. Make your own popcorn.
Greg Palast, I want to thank you so much for this fascinating dialogue. Your history and your detailed analysis of it all is just wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It's a treat as always to talk with you, Greg.
Well, and I'd be a treat to meet with you all when I'm down there in Georgia at the Norcross Center in Gwinnett on Wednesday, all day, 1, 4, and 7 p.m. showings. We'll have discussions with some of the best and most militant and most articulate voting rights advocates, including Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter Fund, and just some fantastic people. And I think we're going to have Gerald Griggs of the NAACP there. I mean, here's a street fighting man.
Excellent. Yep. Excellent. All right.
I'll see
Greg,
there.
thank you.
Okay. VigilanteMovie.com.
Thank you, Greg Palast. All right.